Too many people walk into relationships, whether romantic, professional, or social, trying to earn value rather than bring it. They enter the room hoping to be chosen, to be seen, to be validated, and they base their entire self-worth on whether or not someone else picks them. But here's the truth. If you don't know your value before you step into the room, you'll spend the entire time trying to prove you belong there. That's not confidence. That's desperation dressed up as effort. When you don't have a grounded sense of your worth, you start overcompensating. You overgive. You over-explain. You overstay in situations that don't feed you. And at first, it might seem like being kind, being generous, being patient. But there's a difference between being kind and being a doormat. There's a difference between having grace and having no boundaries. You can be a good person with a kind heart and still say, "This doesn't meet my standard, I deserve better." It's not about arrogance or entitlement, it's about alignment. When you understand the effort you bring, the consistency you offer, the heart you put into something, you don't beg people to recognize it. You simply refuse to stay where it's not noticed. That's what value looks like. You stop negotiating your price with people who are only offering loose change. You start realizing your peace, your energy, your love. These are premium currencies. Not everyone gets access to them. Not everyone should. But here's where it gets tricky. When you've been undervalued for a long time, being treated well can feel uncomfortable. You'll sabotage the good because you're used to proving yourself to people who never asked for your best, but constantly demanded it anyway. You've trained yourself to chase, to fix, to hustle for connection. So when someone comes along and simply respects you without all the effort, you question it. That's why knowing your value isn't just about confidence, it's about healing. You need to stop selling your time to jobs that drain you, to people who ignore you, to causes that break you, but never build you. You need to understand that your energy is not infinite. Every yes to someone else is a no to yourself. So the question becomes, what are you saying no to when you keep trying to earn love, earn attention, earn validation? Usually you're saying no to rest, no to growth, no to standards, no to self-respect. You become so busy proving your worth that you forget to live it. There is a quiet kind of power in someone who doesn't need to convince anyone of their worth. They walk into a room and they don't try to compete. They don't shrink. They don't perform. They just are. And because they know what they bring to the table, they're not afraid to eat alone. They don't chase. They attract. They don't beg. They choose. They don't audition. They embody. That's the difference between someone who needs external validation to feel valuable and someone who has already decided, "I am enough." When you know your value, you stop being impressed by the bare minimum. You stop falling for the breadcrumb texts. You stop tolerating late replies, mixed signals, and excuses packaged as effort. You raise the bar, not because you think you're better than others, but because you finally realize you were the one holding yourself back by accepting less. You stop making people the prize and start realizing that you are the prize. And any environment that doesn't recognize that isn't one you belong in, it's one you graduate from. But all of this starts with a decision to stop asking for permission to be loved, respected, and seen. A decision to show up fully, regardless of who notices. A decision to leave spaces where your soul is starving and enter ones where your spirit is fed. No one can make that choice for you. No one will come along and declare your worth for you. That's an inside job. And the moment you stop outsourcing your value to people who never deserve to define it, that's the moment everything begins to change. There's a version of you that thinks begging is bravery, that if you care enough, fight hard enough, stay long enough, show more of your heart, someone will finally wake up and realize your worth. But what if I told you that what feels like boldness is actually betrayal, not of them, of you? Because when you beg for love, attention, or validation, what you're really saying is, I don't believe I'm enough unless you say I am. That's not strength. That's surrendering your power in disguise. We've been taught that persistence is noble, that if something matters, you don't walk away. But there's a difference between effort and desperation. Effort is reciprocal. It's two people leaning in, building something together. Desperation is you building alone while someone watches. It's knocking on a door that's already been closed, hoping it'll magically open with one more knock. But love, real love, doesn't make you beg. Real connection doesn't have you questioning your sanity at 2 a.m., wondering why you feel invisible while giving everything. You betray yourself every time you ask someone to give you what they're already showing they won't. When you remind them of your worth, of your goodness, of everything you've done, and they still shrug, still hesitate, still half show up, you're not reminding them. You're reminding yourself that you're afraid to leave. And it's okay to feel afraid. It's okay to want something so badly that you try one more time. But at some point your repeated attempts stop being brave and start becoming self-abandonment. Begging turns you into a performer. You tailor your words, adjust your personality, play the role you think will make them stay. You dim your light so they feel comfortable. You soften your truth so they don't leave. But every time you do that, a small part of you dies. The part that knows what you actually want. The part that knows you deserve more than being tolerated or almost chosen. You become addicted to potential. You fall in love with the idea of what it could be, instead of seeing it for what it is. And the real danger, you start to believe that love is earned through suffering. That if you just sacrifice enough of yourself, someone will finally say, you're worth it. But love doesn't work like that. Respect doesn't work like that. You don't prove your value through pain. You don't become lovable by becoming small. That narrative is poison. It teaches you to stay where you're not fed, to convince people who already made up their minds, to trade your dignity for breadcrumbs and call it a meal. Somewhere along the way, we confused access with affection. Just because someone still lets you call, or still responds, or still keeps you around, doesn't mean they value you. It doesn't mean they're all in. And yet we hang on to scraps. A reply, a compliment, a moment of warmth that quickly disappears. And we convince ourselves that maybe, just maybe, if we're more patient, more understanding, more forgiving, it will change. But how much more of yourself are you willing to lose waiting for someone else to find you? The truth is, you don't need to prove your worth to anyone. You don't need to sell yourself in the emotional marketplace like you're running out of time. You are not a product. You are not a project. You are a person with needs, with limits, with value that doesn't disappear just because someone failed to see it. And if someone needs to be convinced to stay, they were never really with you to begin with. Boldness is walking away when it's easier to stay. It's choosing silence over one more desperate text. It's standing in front of the mirror and saying, I love you enough to stop chasing people who don't. That's the kind of courage that heals you. That brings you home to yourself. Not because it feels good in the moment, it usually doesn't, but because it stops the bleeding. Because you finally draw the line between loyalty and self-neglect. Begging is not love, it's a survival strategy. It's what we do when we haven't yet remembered who we are. But once you do, once you remember the kind of peace you bring into a room, the way you show up for people, the depth of your heart, you stop chasing and start choosing. You stop performing and start protecting your energy. Because the loudest I love you is the one you say to yourself when you finally stop asking others to say it first. Rejection feels personal. It lands in your chest like proof that you're not enough. That you said the wrong thing, showed up the wrong way, weren't interesting, attractive, smart, or worthy enough to be chosen. It stings, not just because someone said no, but because we wrap our identity around that no. We use it as evidence to confirm every quiet insecurity we've been carrying. But rejection isn't about your value, it's about direction. It's not a red light telling you to stop being who you are, it's a rerouting showing you where you actually belong. It's easy to forget that, especially when rejection feels repeated. When one person turns away, then another, then another. It starts to feel like a pattern. You begin wondering if maybe you're the common denominator, and you are, but not in the way you think. It's not that something is wrong with you, it's that you keep trying to find love, opportunity, or validation in places that were never designed to hold you. You keep knocking on doors because they look shiny, not because they're meant to open for you. Rejection isn't a punishment, it's redirection in real time. It's life pulling you back from situations you were trying to force. It's protection from settling for less than what aligns with who you truly are. The people who walk away, the opportunities that slip through, the situations that crumble, they were never part of the bigger plan. You just hadn't realized it yet. And that's the thing, most of the time, you only understand the why in hindsight. You only see the rerouting once you've reached the better destination. But in the moment, rejection feels like loss. And we hate losing. We hate unanswered texts, cancelled plans, ghosted conversations. We hate being overlooked for the job, passed up for the promotion, left out of the room. It triggers our sense of not being chosen, and deep down, many of us confuse being chosen with being loved. That's where we go wrong, because when someone chooses you, but you had to shrink yourself to earn that choice, that's not love. That's conditional acceptance based on a filtered version of you. Rejection, in contrast, often clears the path for something more real. Think about it. Some of your most important redirections came from moments that felt like endings. The friend who ghosted you created space for deeper connections. The job you didn't get made room for something more aligned. The person who didn't want you freed you to become someone even they wouldn't recognize today. But you can't see that when you're clinging. When you're so focused on being chosen by the wrong people, you miss the chance to discover the right ones. When you resist rejection, you resist growth. You need to understand that being rejected doesn't make you unworthy. Sometimes you're just too much for the wrong room. Sometimes your depth is lost on shallow minds. Sometimes your energy disrupts the comfort of people who aren't ready to grow. And that's okay. You weren't sent here to be everyone's match. You were sent to be the right match for the right people, the right path, the right purpose. Rejection filters what isn't yours. It strips away the distractions. It forces clarity, and clarity is a gift. We spend so much energy trying to decode rejection. What did I do wrong? How could I fix it? How do I win them back? That kind of thinking keeps you stuck in the past. It keeps you obsessed with adjusting yourself to fit molds you've outgrown. But the real shift happens when you stop asking, why didn't they choose me? And start asking, why was I trying so hard to be chosen there? That's the question that opens doors. That's the mindset that moves you forward. Rejection often mirrors your own resistance to change. You get rejected from a job you didn't even want, a relationship you knew deep down wasn't right, a plan that didn't excite you anymore, and yet you mourn it like it was the best thing that could have happened. Why? Because it's familiar. Because certainty, even when it's painful, feels safer than the unknown. But that comfort zone is a cage, and sometimes rejection is the only thing strong enough to break the lock. The challenge is to stop interpreting rejection as a personal attack and start seeing it as divine realignment. As life's way of saying, not here, not this, not yet. And the moment you stop chasing closed doors, the moment you stop taking every no as a reflection of your worth, you'll feel something else: relief. You'll feel the weight lift. You'll sense the subtle peace that comes when something that wasn't meant for you finally lets go. That's the moment you start to reroute, not just in your path, but in your identity. You begin to realize that rejection didn't break you, it revealed you. Energy is one of the most underestimated currencies we have. We talk about time management, money management, even emotional intelligence, but rarely do we talk about energy allocation. Where your energy goes, your life grows. And if you're not conscious about where and how you spend it, you end up bankrupt in the areas that matter most. You start waking up tired even after 8 hours of sleep. You feel drained after a conversation. You feel empty after giving and getting nothing real back. That's not a coincidence. That's mismanagement of energy. There's a brutal truth most people don't want to admit. Not everything you give your energy to will give back. Not every person will reciprocate. Not every job will reward your loyalty. Not every friend will celebrate your wins. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you stop pouring into black holes expecting to find light. You can love people deeply and still walk away when they only take. You can give your best at work and still choose to leave when your growth is stunted. That's not selfish, it's smart. Because every unit of energy you spend on the wrong thing is a unit you're not investing in something right. You need to start treating your energy like money. You wouldn't throw your paycheck into a slot machine that never paid out. You wouldn't keep funding a business that loses every month with no plan to recover. But when it comes to people and relationships, we stay. We excuse, we try harder. We give second, third, and fourth chances to situations that haven't shown a single sign of change. That's emotional overspending. And like any other kind of overspending, it leads to debt. Not just financial but spiritual. You start running on fumes. The real issue isn't always other people taking your energy. It's you not guarding it. It's you believing that being a good person means being endlessly available. That love means saying yes every time. That support means giving even when it empties you. But love with no boundaries isn't love. It's martyrdom. And while sacrifice is sometimes beautiful, self-erasure never is. You cannot keep breaking yourself into pieces just so others can feel whole. That's not balance. That's burnout. You're not supposed to feel depleted in the places that are meant to grow you. You're not supposed to feel like a ghost in your own friendships, like a burden in your own relationship, like a machine at your job. You are not built to only give. You are built to exchange, to circulate, to offer your light in places that reflect it back. That's how you stay whole. That's how you build a life that sustains you. You invest where there's return, not because you expect people to owe you, but because mutuality is the foundation of everything healthy. Some people only want access to your energy, not your growth. They love the way you show up, but they're not interested in showing up for you. They take your kindness as weakness, your consistency as convenience, your attention as entitlement. And it's easy to keep feeding that dynamic, because it feels like love. But love that drains you isn't love, it's dependence. And when someone depends on your energy without pouring back into you, that's not a relationship, that's a transaction. And you're the one paying every time. You don't owe your energy to anyone who confuses your presence with permission to take without giving. You don't owe your light to people who only show up when it's convenient. The people who deserve your energy are the ones who protect it, who notice when you're tired and offer support, instead of more demands, who don't just take your advice but thank you for it, who see your consistency and don't treat it like a given. Those are the places worth investing in, where your effort doesn't disappear into silence, but grows into something better. When you become intentional about your energy, you start attracting people who respect it. When you set boundaries, you stop wasting time convincing people of your worth. You stop explaining your heart. You stop justifying your needs. You simply live in alignment with them. That kind of peace can't be faked, and it can't be taken. It comes when you realize that your energy isn't for everyone. It's not a free-for-all, it's a sacred resource. And how you spend it shapes your life more than almost anything else. One of the most exhausting roles you can play in your life is that of the convincer. The one constantly explaining their intentions, proving their value, chasing clarity that should have been offered freely, or trying to win over someone who's undecided about you. You start tailoring your words, calculating your tone, monitoring your energy so it lands the right way. Not because you're fake, but because you're hoping that if you do everything just right, they'll finally see you. But the truth is, the right people don't need convincing. They just get it. They just get you. You will never have to perform for the people who are aligned with your soul. You won't have to sell them on your kindness, or prove your loyalty with constant sacrifices. You won't feel like you're one misstep away from being discarded. With the right people, you're allowed to breathe. You're allowed to be messy sometimes. You're allowed to not always have the perfect response, because real connection doesn't hinge on perfection. It lives in presence. It grows in truth. And truth never needs to be dressed up to be respected. What happens far too often is we internalize someone's uncertainty about us as our own inadequacy. We think if they're unsure, we must be doing something wrong. We must not be attractive enough, funny enough, deep enough, secure enough. So we overgive, over-communicate, over-function. We show up before they even ask. We anticipate their needs and neglect our own. And still, somehow, it never feels like enough. That's because it's not about what you're doing. It's about who you're doing it for. When someone isn't your person, whether romantically, professionally, or platonically, your effort will always feel like noise to them. It will always be too much, or not enough. They won't say it outright, but you'll feel it in the way they delay their responses, the way they forget your milestones, the way they disappear when things get hard. You'll sense it in the way they speak to you when no one's watching, in the way they flinch at your vulnerability, in the way they treat your presence like a backup plan instead of a priority. And you'll try harder, thinking that if you just tweak something, anything, they'll finally see your worth. But someone who can't see you at your core will never be moved by the surface. The right people don't flinch when you show your flaws. They don't run at the first sign of your complexity. They move closer, not because you made a perfect impression, but because they feel something real, something rare, and they respect it. The right people have eyes for who you are, not just what you offer. They don't need a perfect version of you. They just want the honest one. That's the kind of relationship, romantic or otherwise, that doesn't make you feel like you're constantly one conversation away from being dismissed. You're not here to audition for connection. You're not a commercial trying to convince someone to buy in. The people who are meant for you will feel your value, without you having to explain every detail. You won't have to remind them that you care. They'll feel it. You won't have to prove your consistency. They'll trust it. And when life gets messy, as it always does, they won't bolt. They'll stay. Not because you begged them to, but because they chose to. There's a big difference between someone who stays because you asked, and someone who stays because they want to. When you let go of the need to convince, you finally create space for the people who are already convinced. You stop spending your life knocking on closed doors, and start walking through open ones. You stop analyzing mixed signals, and start gravitating toward clarity. That's what the right people bring: clarity and peace. Not because they're perfect, but because they're aligned. And alignment never feels forced. It doesn't need fixing. It doesn't need constant reassurance. It just flows. It just works. Sometimes the deepest pain we experience doesn't come from rejection. It comes from staying too long in places where we weren't fully seen. It comes from trying to turn almost into always. From trying to teach someone how to love us instead of finding someone who just does. You deserve to be met, not managed. You deserve to be held, not tolerated. And you deserve relationships where being yourself is not a risk. It's the reason they stay. If there's one truth I want you to walk away with, it's this: you were never meant to beg for what's already yours by nature. Respect, love, peace and space to grow. When you treat your energy like currency, when you stop trying to win over the wrong people, and when you let rejection redirect instead of define you, something powerful happens. You step out of survival mode and into self-respect. You stop chasing scraps and start setting standards. You begin to understand that needing to be chosen isn't the same as being valued. The right people will recognize your worth without you needing to shrink, perform, or explain it. The right path won't cost you your identity. And every rejection along the way is just a divine rerouting, an invitation to get closer to what's truly aligned with who you are. This is your reminder: you deserve more, not in some distant future, not when you're better, but right now. So stop begging, stop bending, stop diluting your truth just to make it easier to swallow. You're not here to be convincing, you're here to be clear. And once you start living like that, everything in your life will begin to rise to meet you.